Hello, Reset with Raven family, and welcome. I'm excited you're here today for this conversation. We are in for a treat, guided by the values of consistent self improvement, commitment to always doing your best, kindness, social responsibility, and truth. Our guest today seeks to understand the heart and souls of every being he encounters. With a combined 180 years of life experiences from his grandparents that raised him, Kyle Spyrides has cemented the structures of good values into how he approaches life, business, and eternal growth. Kyle has decided to release the dead weight and decide his destiny. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Raven. Thanks for having me on. Wow, what an intro.
I'm excited to have you. Kyle, when I think of you, the words of joy, strength, overcomer, calm yet confident, bold yet warm come to mind. So I'm excited for our guests to get a small dose of some of the many layers that comprise Kyle.
Wow.
So Kyle, you're welcome. So Kyle, when we first connected, what resonated with me was how people have played a major role in your reset. Share with us how your childhood and upbringing as it relates to family shaped who you are today and played a very monumental role in your story.
Thanks, Raven. Yeah, well, my family has made a huge role in my story, and it's not, I guess, a normal sort of family sequence. As for most people, we often have different people showing up at different times in our lives. But straight off the bat, I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, and my mother was an international model. So she was on some sets with Charlize Theron. She was on these different sets all around the world, and she'd be on a 3-month set, say somewhere in Moscow, and then they'd extend it, and then she'd be off in Japan and different sort of places in the world. So I was born right around the time that her career was taking off, and she, a little after I was born, she had to go off and work. And so I was raised by my South African grandmother, and I was actually raised in a pub. So it was safer in Joburg to have me in the pub than have me at home, alone or well, it wouldn't mean alone, it would have been with my grandfather. But, it was safer to have me actually in the pub. So my grandparents, had all these patrons, all these like locals that would always come to the pub, and I would be there playing pool. I'd be, watching TV. I'd have my own little stool. I'd have this whole set going. And there was one story where I was, I'd be really spoiled by my granny, my South African granny. And I was sitting there one day on my stool in my corner. No one could sit on that stool. And I just said, "Granny, ice cream." And I've been told this story. I don't remember it. And this lady, this patron came up, and she'd always be there on Saturdays. And she came up to me and she said, "Kyle, you can't call out to your granny like that. She's back there slaving away, cooking us all meals. You can't, And then I said, apparently I turned to her, and I was like only a few years old. And I said, "If I call my granny, she will come." And so that was the cheek that I was, or the confidence that I had growing up. And I had that kind of confidence because I think I was around adults all the time, and I was so spoiled and so loved. And then at the age of 2.5, my mum, in her travels, had met someone in Australia, and this Australian man said, "You got to bring him over to Australia. Like, South Africa's, dangerous. Not the best place to grow up. Bring up a kid. Like, bring him to Australia." And so I was brought over to Australia, and one of the first meetings I had was with my new stepfather, Ward, and his family. So now I'd left my entire South African family, and it was only my mother in Australia, and I was meeting Ward's family, and we were at his parents' house. So they were going to become my Australian grandparents through marriage. And I was walking up the stairs, and my Australian grandmother to be, I guess, at that time, she looked at me, and she had this feeling shoot through her body, and like kind of this message from God that she was going to be really important in my life. And she could see this like lost look in my eyes and this like concern and this fear, and like this kind of like I was in this little cocoon. So it was a total opposite, to what I was like in South Africa. And yeah, she just had this strong feeling. And it was actually 14 years later when I was displaced from home, middle of the night, trying to find a place to stay. Skipped a couple of trains down to where my Australian grandparents lived, knocking on the window, in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. And they came down in their gowns, and they came and opened up their doors and opened up their arms and their hearts, and they actually became my grandparents. And oh, there we go. That's my grandfather over my shoulder. For people that can't see, he's featured everywhere on my website. But my grandparents, they became they became my parents. They became everything to me, and they really guided me. In those first few years of teenage, through all the way to my later years in teenage years, I was very closed off, emotional and communication, everything. And my grandmother would stick out there. I would come into the house, and she'd jump up from the couch and ask me all about my day, tell me how much she loved me, how much she cared about me. She really laid on the cake, laid on the spread, and so I would come in, and where I was staying with my grandparents, I was staying underneath the house just past my grandfather's architect boards. So I could come in and I could turn left quickly and sneak, so while I was going through that whole emotional stage in my life, I could just run away to my own I used to call it a dungeon. But every time I touched that door handle, she would pop up. This 70-year-old woman would somehow pop up like a spring and come and greet me. So that's I guess an overview of my family experiences.
That's beautiful to have them in your life, and especially when you said you knew anytime you said her name, she would come. If I say my granny's name, she'll come. You also shared they open up their arms and their hearts to you.
Mm.
You have had a very life-changing experience when it
Yeah,
comes to your heart. Share with us that experience and how that has affected how you even live your life today.
for sure. So in every single heartbeat that affects my life today, and every little flutter, every little pain point, every little concern. I think one thing that I learned more recently was how much you can go through an experience and think that you're all okay, and then it just shows up subtly, maybe in a subtle anxiety or a subtle thing. And I was a little while ago, I was getting up and I was going for a run every morning. I'd wake up and I'd always worry, like kind of wild worry, but I'd worry that my heart would explode, or I'd worry like, oh my gosh, am I putting too much stress on my heart? And then I'd have a cold shower and I'd worry, oh my gosh, am I putting, so kind of becoming is it a hypochondriac, something like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, in a way, specifically with that organ. So yeah, so when I was 18, 2 months after I finished school, I came back from the gym one night and went into this house that I was staying at the time, and I suddenly felt really, really cold. So I chucked all these layers on, beanies. In Australia, we call it doona. A doona is like a big blanket, big blanket. So I chucked my doona on. That's one for the audience. And I covered myself up, and Independence Day was there on, and I just went, oh, cool. I'll tune into some aliens and some fighter jets, and we'll give this a go. And yeah, all of a sudden I got really, really hot. So I took everything off, and then I was stark naked on the couch. And then that was the first sign. The next night I went to get some ice from the fridge, collapsed on the ground in the middle of the night, and just laid there for 20 minutes. It felt like 20 minutes. I got no idea how long it was, but I was fully conscious, but I couldn't physically move my body. And then we went to the doctor. The doctor said, I think you've got gastro, take these tablets. Went home, took the tablets, vomited the tablets up. And that's when I went, okay, there's something seriously not right here, and I need to go to the hospital. So I was taken down to my grandparents' house, and because I wasn't staying there on that weekend, and then I was taken down to my grandparents' house, and I was staying with other family, and they took me to my uncle, and my uncle looked at me walking down the hallway, and he said, "You've got a virus. You clearly have a virus, I can see it. You need to go to the doctor. If the doctor doesn't take you to the hospital, then you guys need to take him to the hospital. And so I went to my doctor, and my doctor was this lovely old Chinese man who'd been my doctor for years and years. And years earlier, he gave me this book titled Hope, because he knew some of the hardships or some of the challenges I was going through. And in this book, it had lovely landscapes and it had quotes in it, all about hope. So it was more than just a doctor, and he looked at my fingers and he said, "See these things, these red dots on the tips of your fingers?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That means you've got an infection on your heart." And then I was like, "Wow, okay." And he said, "You need to go to the hospital right away." He put me in an ambulance, rushed to the hospital. I was in the hospital down the bottom, and I was telling my family I couldn't excrete, couldn't go to the toilet. And the nurse came over, looked at my paperwork, and said, "What the hell are you doing down here? You're supposed to be, straight through to ICU. Your organs are shutting down. That's why you can't excrete. Your organs are shutting down." So then I got taken through to ICU. But just before I got taken through the ICU, I saw the surgeon, and he said, "Carl, we're going to put you to sleep. We're just going to put this pipe down your throat." I think I was so sick, Raven, that I just, when you're not really registering, so you're just like, "Oh, okay, sure, that sounds
Just
like a
nodding.
plan.
You're
That sounds good."
completely out of it.
Exactly. You're just like not even there. So I remember those bits, and this is where the story takes a twist. My I was put into an induced coma, and the doctor turned to my mother and said, "He's not going to make it through the night. There's no chance he's going to make it through the night. Like, we can operate, but either way, he's got a 3 centimeter bug eating a hole into his heart, and he's had this there for a while." So my mother called my stepfather because they said they wanted to operate to try and cut everything off, and and they were going to cut a big chunk of my heart off. And she called my stepfather, who was in Ireland at the time. So he was the one that brought us into Australia. So he was in Ireland at the time, and she called him, and she always trusted his kind of advice. He was a chiropractor, but he had a lot of different. He was a kinesiologist and had a lot of different modalities, and she always trusted him with some of his advice. So she called him and told him everything, and he's like, she said, "What do you think we should do?" And I said, "Look, I'm not there. You're there. You're going to have to make the call." But personally, I think he's too weak to operate. I'd just keep him in the induced coma, which is a huge call to make. Anyway, they left me in the induced coma. I woke up a week later. They didn't operate. I woke up, and my we've got this thing called Wheat Bix over here. I had Wheat Bix and vomited straight up onto my hospital gown. I had all these pipes and everything in me, so it was pretty full on. I was in the middle of ICU, and I didn't really know what was going on. And so everyone was waiting for my stepfather, the one in Ireland, to come over, and kind of tell me what's going on and fill me in. And so he came over from Ireland, and he said, "You had a 33% chance of surviving when you came to the hospital. So I don't know how you survived, but somehow, with luck, you survived. I don't know what it is, but you've got this 3 centimeter bug still on your valve, still eating a hole into your valve, and we got to do something about it." So he said, "This is the paperwork. You just need to sign here if you want to go and have the operation." I said, "Okay, tell me a bit more about the operation." He said, "What they do is they cut a chunk of your heart off. They put a metal attachment on, and then this is how your life's going to be impaired for the rest of your life." And so I was 18, and I just went, "Wow, okay, pretty full on." And he said, "There is another option." And so I said, "Okay, what's this option?" He said, "There's this thing called the alkaline diet." So what's that? And he said, basically, it's a juice fast. So you starve the body from any protein, any carbohydrates, any sugars, and you just have foods that are towards the alkaline scale. And basically, you change the ecosystem inside the body, and then that should starve the bug and drive the bug out. And so, yeah, for me, all I knew at that stage, Raven, was just rugby and protein and muscles, and
Yeah,
I
you're
didn't
only
know much.
18. Yeah, you're only 18 with all this going on. I think you, yeah, really emphasize that all of this is going on, and I'm sure you're like in probably like a daze, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
It's
Like just
happening so fast. It's in a matter of like a week or so. You were
yes,
fine one moment, and now someone's telling you, "Oh, you have a 33% chance of survival."
yeah, yeah, yeah. And every second I can die because of that bug. And so going forward, I had to make a decision. I had to go, all right, I had to go completely medical, cut this thing off, cut everything off, cut, and then lose a part of my heart, and then deal with that for the rest of my life. Or I take a chance at this alkaline thing that I never knew. I was like, I wasn't into it, didn't know about that whole natural healing world. Was naive to it, all of it. And yeah, so I had to make a decision, and I was pretty dazed about it. And I just said, "Look, Ward, do you believe this can work?" And he said, "Yes." And I always trusted him as a man. Like he always looked after me. I trusted the man. I felt like, all right, if you say this can work, let's give it a go. And so we did. We did. We went. He handed me a beetroot juice. My grandmother gave me these tapes about peaks and valleys. I started doing visualizations over my heart. I started learning all about the heart, where the valves are, how everything works, and you know, getting informed about my heart. And then I was having vitamins, everything, and that So I was trying my best to get rid of this bug naturally. It wasn't a popular decision for sure. Majority of my family were against it. The hospital was against it, which I understand. They felt that they could help me in a certain way that they knew how, and I was totally going against it. But I didn't realize what sort of how should I say what sort of upset I would cause in the hospital. My
What's
cardiologist.
guiding you at this point when you said I made because I'm big on decisions. You said I made the decision to go with the alkaline diet. I made the decision against, let's just say, popular opinion. I
Yeah,
made the decision. So, what is guiding you to make these decisions? Because these are at one may argue, and maybe even you would say this is life or death, like literally.
yeah, yeah. So you kind of have to put your emotions to the side for a bit. And I think that's what I had to do at that time. I had to kind of just focus. And my stepfather was really good at making me focus on that. When sometimes family members would cry around me during that whole procedure, he would say, "Look, express your emotions, and obviously we love and care about Kyle, but just he needs strength right now. He needs strength." So he's pretty much saying, "Cry later, come and bring him strength." So for me, it was, I think it was like an internal feeling and a feeling in my heart. Like, I actually, I, I can see everything mapped out for me, and I've got all the numbers, all the percentages, all the details. And on this side, I'm taking a big chance, because there isn't years and billions of dollars of research and everything into this whole alkaline diet, proving that if you go this path, you've got a 90 blah blah blah. Like there's nothing there. It's complete. It's a At that stage, it's a complete faith based decision.
Mm.
So it's not a database decision. So for me, it's like if you've got a lawyer and you've got an argument, and you've got an argument one with a whole bunch of data, a whole bunch of numbers, a whole bunch of past experiences, and then you've got another lawyer who's saying, "Trust me," you know. So yeah. I think I had to trust from my heart and from my gut, and just look him in the eyes and say, "Do you think this can work? Can we give this a shot?" You know, and him saying, "Yes, I believe it can work," and me putting my faith in his hands and feeling more comfortable to put my faith in his hands. And I think that's the thing. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe we can do this. The faith. The who knows what can happen from this.
And you're
But
saying
it was
trust, you're saying faith in Ward's hands, faith in the doctor's hands, faith in whose hands?
faith in Ward's hands, because that's the direction I went. Because like with having faith in the doctor's hands is a lot easier because of all the information. It's like I don't want to take it down this path because it might sound cringy, but it's because of some training that I've been doing recently. But if you look at because I do photography, so I do photography for my business, and one of the biggest advantages for my clients getting professional photography, getting photography that isn't stock photos and isn't white backgrounds and has a bit of more connection to it, is that you've got information for that person who's going to buy to see that information and make a more trusted decision. So it's like when you're doing a sale, you give all the data, all the information, all the, so for me, if I was, say, selling myself on a direction to go, it wasn't hard at all to sell myself on the medical decision because of the risks, but it was hard because of the impacts that would have for the rest of my life, having a part of my heart cut off. On the other hand, with Ward's decision, it wasn't a straight incursion. I wasn't cutting anything off, but it was hard to sell myself, will this really work? And even as I went down that path, I wasn't sure. I believed in him, and he was there, and he was showing up every day with beetroot juice and salads and vitamins, and I was doing the visualizations, only in the shower because I was, I didn't want to do it in front of people at that time. I wasn't that comfortable. So I had to really put a lot of faith and belief that this thing would work. And at the time, I had most of my family, saying, what do I think I'm doing? And then I had the nurses and our cardiologist. He came and said, all right, we're going to operate. And it was Ward who said, well, what size does the bug have to get to until it's non-issue? And, he wouldn't give it to us, but it was basically like pulling teeth, and eventually, because I think he was already upset that we didn't have the operation when I was in the coma. So eventually pulled teeth and finally got it out of him. And he said, look, if it gets to 0.5 centimeters and below, then it's a non-issue. And we went, okay, great. That's the number we're going to work to. He got disgruntled. He left. 2 weeks later, he came back, and I've been on this program, on this juicing thing, giving it my best. And he came in and he said, we're going to operate. And then we said, wait. What's the numbers? What's the data? What's the information? And he, he wouldn't give it to us straight off the bat. And, he was a bit upset. I told you that you should be doing this, and you haven't been listening to me. You're putting your life in danger. And so I had to go through all that. And eventually we extracted the numbers. And he said, it's at 0.2 centimeters. And me and Ward were like, what? Like I was in shock, because I was like, this thing actually worked. Like this whole starving the bug out of it. And now that I see what we did, it makes sense that it worked, but it worked over a longer period of time. I think the biggest risk was the dangers in between that time period, which, full disclaimer alert, I'm not telling anybody what to do with their lives. You got free will and, authority over your own life, and you decide what you want to do. But for me, that was probably the biggest risk, was that time, because it took a couple of weeks for that bug to be starved out. So the issue is that the valves weren't closing fully. So because the part of the valve had been eaten off, it was leaking a lot of blood. So I had to get that valve replaced or repaired. And at the time in the hospital, the cardiologist said, look, the only chance we have is replacement. There's no chance of a repair. And we kept going. And then about the 5.5 week mark of being in the hospital, I left. And in the meantime, I made this great friend with this register in the hospital. So as I was leaving, I was being pushed out in the wheelchair, felt this hand grab my shoulder, turn, and it was that register. This register from Somali. Me and him were just, we got on the whole time, because I saw a lot of him. And he said to me, Kyle, Prof just wants me to let you know that your lungs are going to be full of blood. You're going to choke to death in your sleep within about 2 months' time. And so that was like the final sucker punch, like, in my guts. So I just cried. Like I just cried. And the person that was pushing the wheelchair, I just said, like I just waved to them, like, just push me forward, because I need to get out of here. Like I felt like there was something wrong with this place. Like, and then years later I heard, like one of my friends who was also studying to be a cardiologist, he said something about, a lot of patients that had died there needlessly or something like that. So, which it was a main hospital, so it didn't seem like it was bad. But anyway, that was the experience. Went to the new cardiologist, and told him our experience, and he said, he said, who was this cardiologist? And my family said it was, this guy, the name. And he said, I play golf with him on weekends. I don't want to hear anything bad about him. And then my family started to arc up and get upset. And I said, everyone out of the room. I just need to speak to one cardiologist. So they all left. And I said, look, I just want to move forward. This is what I did in the hospital. And he said, oh, look, I don't believe that that's what happened. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I just need to start moving forward. Like, what can we do together? Like, I want to work with you, or I want to work on this to see if I can repair my valve. And he said, he did an echocardiogram, looked at my heart, and he said, actually, you've got a 30% chance of repair. I went, I was told I had 0% chance. He goes, no, I think maybe your heart size has come down since the trauma of the bug, but you've got a 30% chance. So then for about a year, I kept going back to him. In the meantime, I was contacting people in Germany, looking at stem cell research, trying everything that I could try, because I wanted to avoid the knife as much as I could. At the age of 18, I just yeah,
Of
I didn't see
course.
my life going that direction that
Of
early
course.
on. Like maybe a knee surgery down the track or something like that. But so anyway, I went back to him, about 6 months, and he said, "Oh, you've got the 60% chance of repair." I went back to him a couple months later. He said, "Look, you've got a 70% chance of repair." And he was saying my heart was recovering from the trauma of the bug. So I called my stepfather. I said, "What should I do?" He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Let's give it a go. Let's go and have the open heart surgery." So the open heart surgery, the main premise was they were trying to repair the valve. That was the main focus. If they got in there and they couldn't repair the valve, then they were going to have to replace the valve. So I went in, had the open heart surgery, and I was so focused, Raven, on this goal to repair, that I woke up out of the surgery screaming, repair or replacement, repair or replacement, repair or replacement. I was just going nuts. And someone grabbed my hand, through the 5-hour surgery, and they said, "Kyle, it was a repair, it was a repair." And this is in the middle of ICU, and I just started, I won't say the words, but I started swearing. I was going crazy just because I couldn't believe that I got that repair, I got that result that I'd been waiting so long to get.
You just said so much there.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I
that
should
it's
have
just
paused.
so much. And I didn't want to interrupt because it's such a good story. You're a great storyteller, by the way. So you're making us all
Oh,
that are listening feel like we were there too. It was like 10 years ago, right? A decade ago,
yes.
listening
Yeah.
to your story. And one of the many things that I took away is when I thought about your grandmother and how she had these visualizations for you of peaks
Mm,
and valleys, how she was training you and preparing your mind for
yeah.
all of these obstacles and all of these highs and lows that you experience on this journey. And then I thought about also too, because I think so much the decision starts mentally. Everything rests in that mind, that mindset. And you talked about leaving the hospital. So what came to my mind was discernment to know that you needed to leave, that this wasn't the environment or the caretaker or the care team for you because they were not in alignment with your desires. Because my background's in healthcare, so I always think about patient-centered healthcare. What is the
Yeah.
patient desire? What approach does the patient want to their health? This is your life. So
Yeah.
there's an element too of like, hey, I may not agree with you, but if this is the approach that you want to take as your physician, how can I support you medically to take this route? And
Yeah.
then when you talked about um, going to another location, another physician that shared that, hey, I play golf with this guy. No
Yeah.
bad words, no bad talk, no negativity will be spread here in my office about my colleague.
Yep. Yeah.
And again, I go back to, wow, you are a young adult at this time, and you have again that discernment to say, hey, let's remove all emotions from this. I'm just here to get what I need to live my life. You know, we're starting afresh. Let me tell you what the processes or the procedures that I had at the previous location, but remove all emotions from this. Your friendships, whatever, physician, this is what I need, and I'm
Yeah.
just here to get what I need, and I don't want to be super emotional about it or your ties to friends or anything like that. And then when you said I was so focused on the goal, I wanted to like scream just then, like shout with you because I love that. And I think one of the underlying or foundational components to your healing, to who Kyle is that mental fitness. Because that's what I
Mm.
keep hearing throughout. You're like, I was focused on the goal. I was focused on what's the best decision, discernment, thought, like removing. Because I could see how other people who may not have been as mentally strong as they're experiencing this. You're like, I'm 18, I have my whole life. I'm ready to like go party, have a good time. Like this is
Yeah,
not on
not
my
a part of
list
the
of
plan.
things to do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that is like powerful to me. You wake up and you're like, it's almost like a mantra, like, and you're chanting it like under the anesthesia, repair,
yeah,
replace.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm
literally,
like,
yeah,
I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh,
yeah,
so that is so good. Oh, that's powerful. And you continue to still have to manage and take care of your lifestyle because of your heart condition. And one of the things that we had talked about previously was how the pandemic caused a reset for you. Talk about how the pandemic caused a reset for you, and how you look at life, and then how you looked at how you are really taking care of. I always say your temple, how you're taking care. You have your when you talk about your mom being an international model. I was like, okay, so what do you have going on? You have, and you're like, I'm a photographer. I was like, oh, okay. I see that aesthetic going on with you as well. So talk about how you had to make sure that you really took care of your body, your temple, your mind, considering that you would say that you're immunocompromised with the
yeah.
pandemic going on. Talk about how you had to navigate that, or how you are navigating
Yeah, so I definitely think what you're saying there as the mindset is really crucial. Getting your mind in the game. The one thing I was saying, for the value of the listeners at home, it's not as simple as for me. It wasn't as simple as, all right, this is great. I've got a good mindset. I'm good at removing the emotion, because I did realize that I actually could have actually caused a lot of my heart situation because of how I was, and because of that cutting off. And so I guess it's like a yin and a yang thing. You know what I mean, Raymond? Like it's a balance. If you've got these strengths and you work them in the right way in your life, you're good. If you work them the wrong way, you're going to be destructive in your life. And for me, I found that because of my youth. So in my younger years, I had a lot of abuse, and physical, mental abuse. And what I did was I pushed that down. I pushed a lot of those emotions down. I neglected a lot of the emotions. I took to the gym, took to rugby, took to different outlets where I could get my aggression out. And I think you said warm before. As a teenager, at 18, I probably wasn't as warm. I got into a lot of fights. I got into a lot of fisticuffs and all that sort of stuff. And it was at that period of my life where the crossroads, I could have gone either way. It's definitely just a few steps or a few decisions where I could have gone down a dark path that didn't serve me, and definitely wouldn't have served humanity. Or I could have gone down the path that I'm striving for today. So that ability to cut off emotionally, like when it's necessary. Um, I had to then also learn after the surgery, after everything, how to heal how to heal those traumas that I think had an emotional impact on my health, and why, and it wasn't me that came up with the idea that I think the trauma and the abuse affected my heart. There was other people kind of telling me, like, well, when you go into your life, like, crap, like this stuff, it's going to affect you in some way. And if you were just holding a stern face and thinking you were cutting everything off, you weren't. You were pushing emotions down. So that's one thing that I go into now, and it's really trying to get to the heart and the soul of the matter, and really get deep, and that's something I do in my photography. So if I'm sitting down with someone and I'm taking photographs of them, I chat to them, so I kind of pull the camera away and I just chat to them. I just get that connection. I just talk to them, and it's all layers. You're just getting a bit of their layers, their facade, their kind of their business profile. You're getting that off. They're kind of going out persona. You're getting that off, and you're just getting deeper and deeper until I believe when you're taking those portraits, that there's a flicker of a second where they show their soul, where that person,
Mm.
my grandfather in my shoulder, there's that flicker of that second when it shows their soul. And years later, when my grandfather was ill, and I came over from the west coast of Australia to the east coast, I stayed with him. And towards the end, when he was passing away, and he passed away in his family home, so we all looked after him. I held his hand right into the last moments, and he left this earth. And the family asked, "Where's that photograph? Where's that portrait of Clivey?" And it was on a hard drive back on the west coast of Australia. And so I had to try and find it somehow. But they were so persistent on that image that has to be the image. That has to be the photograph of him everywhere. And living in his house for 10 years and being around him, I had that one opportunity where the camera was there and I saw him with his beret coming downstairs, and I just chatted to him for a little while, and he showed his soul. And that became the image that represented him, the observer, the quiet man, the architect, and all those characteristics were captured in that image. So for me, in terms of mindset, it, you know, it's great to be strong and tough, but you have to do a lot of that work, I think, before you head out the door. You have to
Mm.
really look in the mirror. You have to, do affirmations. If you're having some negative thoughts, sit down, have a meditation, or just do a bit of journaling. Write out. You can write out things you're grateful for, but also try and do some reflection and go, why am I having this negative? Why am I carrying this with me? No, like,
Are these
how's
the
this going to
ways
serve
that
me?
we release dead weight? That's what I was gonna ask you too.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. And funny enough, going and taking photography, going and taking shoots in those years that I found tough, and I'd come back to Sydney and different sort of things, I would go, and release dead weight by going and taking photographs, and that would be my experience, because there's something purely simple and like spiritual about photography, because you're in that present moment, and you have to be the most tuned in person in that moment. And when you think about spirituality, or you think about, you know, people with deep souls, and you, they are people that are present. They're there. So that's another thing that I guess helps release the dead weight. But for me to keep going on in my life now, and not getting into those ruts and not getting into apathy, you need to find ways, because it's and what I love, I got to say, what I love with people that are mentors and inspirational people, is when they show that authentic side and they say, hey, crap, man, I have bad days. I have days where I just don't want to get up. I'm a human, because that, and it's not in a way of, oh, like, let's laugh their pain. It's in a way of, hey, we're connected. We're so connected. We have the same things. You want to provide for your family. I want to provide for my family. You want to feel important in society. I want to feel important in society. Like, and then you have days where you don't feel adequate enough. Like, you don't feel, fulfilled or worthy enough. And
Mm.
and so do I. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that when you're connecting with other souls and connecting with people on a deeper level, you get to have that human experience, and you get that reminder, because we get so caught up in our own world. I can get caught up in, if I go and see my cardiologist, my electrosurgeon, whoever it is, every time I go and see them, they would tell me something new, something, about the wires, but, can't come out. If you have an infection, we have to pull it out. We've got a split second before we have to operate. You can die, and all these things that I guess they're informing me, and they probably have to inform me, because of the world we live in, and suing people and all that sort of stuff. I guess there are reasons, but it can totally knock you out emotionally, and it can totally hit you for six. But when you come out of yourself and you put yourself into something else, and maybe and one of these things, I had a conversation with a person, who, his charity organization helped people that have been trafficked, human trafficking, child trafficking, and just talking to that person, and kind of just realizing and thinking, what can I add to society? What gifts can I give to society? How can I help out society? And just those reminders of how it's not just you, I think, are so essential. You know, I think that's really where you can get out of your own way.
I agree. I found that even through conversations like these, it's
Yeah,
been such for me, it's been such a blessing to meet people that I might not have encountered or met in the world. And I was listening to someone like, well, someone asked a question in a clubhouse room, and people were asking, well, don't you get nervous talking to strangers? You don't know these people. And I found that because exactly what you said, when you find like that commonality, when you find like, here's what I struggle with. I have bad moments. I have days where it's like, Raven probably wasn't her best, or I probably didn't respond in kindness and in love and in grace. And when you can meet people and say, hey, I struggle with that too. That's one of my shortcomings. That's an area of opportunity that I'm working on. Or here's my heart. Here's my authentic self. This is me. This is me when you see me at the grocery store. This is me when you see me at the gym. This is me at work. This is the real, authentic me. And when
Yeah.
you can feel that, and I feel like with people that are really being authentic, you can feel their presence.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's like, you feel full.
Mm.
And that's the goal that I want when people interact with me. And when you were talking about being able to see into the hearts and souls of your clients when you take pictures, I'm actually gearing up for a photo shoot right now. And that was one of the things I was talking. I actually had the conversation with a photographer yesterday, and she's like, "Tell me about your business. Tell me about your goals. Tell me about
Awesome.
what
Yeah.
you want to make sure comes across in these
Yes.
photos." And I've had several photo shoots, some better than others, and I
Yes.
noticed the ones that I enjoyed the most and I thought captured me the most are the photographers that understood me. Like it was
Mm.
like a snapshot into Raven. This is who she is. Here's the
Yes.
essence of that
Yes.
who
Yeah.
she is, and it's in the photo. And it's just powerful. It's different than just like, oh, just a cute little selfie or something someone just clicked just
Yeah.
passing by. So I completely resonate with you about that. And also, we have to talk about this too. You have a YouTube channel, Decide Your
Mhm.
Destiny Daily Dose, as well as a book with a
Yes.
similar name. So talk to us about that. We can't leave without talking about your amazing book.
Okay. Yes. No. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing that story because that's what I think it is. It's about that connection. It's about that connection. And when you're one thing that I think I'd love to focus on is when you're delivering a service or a product, it's about the person. It's not about you. If they say something like this is too much or I'm not looking right now, or all the kind of you know like responses they have, or objections or things like that. A lot of times, and I worked in sales and sort of things, at a camera store once, and you can see the good salespeople, or maybe I'll use a different word, the good value providers versus the bad value providers. And I think the bad value providers actually take it personally, and they're very much into their own thing. And they're like, oh, this person said this person said they don't have much time. That means I'm not going to give them, my full service. I'm not going to really lay it on to them. And then the good value providers are the ones that go, I don't care what they say coming through the door. I'm going to make sure they have the best experience and they leave here feeling lifted, you know, and it actually showed up in the numbers that those people actually that they did a lot better. And so I think what happens at a certain point is that once you get your house in order and you take care of your stuff, you realize, hey, there's something deep within me. I'm part of a community. I've always been a part of a group, part of a family. Like, how do I actually help other people's lives? How do I actually, and you see this repeated again. And for me, I was writing the book, the Decide Your Destiny book, and that came to me through, I was a moment of deep prayer, and it was after my experience, um, with healing my heart again, and bringing my ejection fraction right up when I went through that serious regime, and then also coming back from Sydney, and with my grandfather, and kind of holding his hand right up until the moment he passed, and having all these experiences in about a 6 to 8 month period of taking full ownership of my health in a pandemic, because because I was told that there would be more surgeries needed to be had. There was more complications and everything. And my ejection fraction had not changed in 9 years. It had always stayed at 34%. And if it goes below 20%, it's really dangerous. Healthy people's ejection fraction is 55 to 65. Your ejection fraction is how well your heart functions. And that 6-month period, I just focused on getting up early, running, juicing, everything I could. And I went to the electrosurgeon, and he was gobsmacked. He said, "I don't know what to do. I don't. Your heart is enjoying being in AF. Only 5% of people's hearts enjoy being in AF post surgery. You're well post surgery, and it's enjoying it. Your heart's gotten stronger. Your ejection fraction's at 49%, which that was a number that I couldn't change for 9 years. So having that experience, and then also going back to Sydney and holding my grandfather's hand and seeing him pass away, in front of my eyes, it was kind of like this fight for life, and this fight for and there's a fight against going against the norm, or going against just going in the easy option and just having procedures and just going, because oftentimes one procedure leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next, and going against that, and then going, let me try and source what power I have within me, and then see my grandfather wanting to pass away. He wasn't ill with anything too hectic, but in his family, when they start to get sick and they can't function, like his mother, one day she was ill, and she was told, she was in the hospital, and she was told she was going to have to go into a retirement village, and she was bouncing on the hospital bed with her granddaughter, and she was told that afternoon that she'd have to go into a retirement village. The next day she was dead. No medical reason why. She just chose to leave this earth like that. And that's what my grandfather was struggling with, because he was not feeling well and he was happy to go. And so we had him in his house for 2 weeks in a hospital bed, looking after him. So the dichotomy, I guess, of fighting for life at your young age, and then fighting for life at your old age, and seeing him just release. A little while when I came back to Perth, I was in prayer, and I just, I was talking to God, or the power above, and I just said, or the ether, or whatever you want to call it. I just said, I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of all these things. I'm not afraid of not being recognized, and not this or that, or all these different fears that we can just, that there's an abundance of them that we can tap into in our human experience. But I said, I'm not afraid of this. I just want to be aligned with my path. I want to be aligned with the reason that I'm here now. And I just want to get to it now. I don't want to muck around for 20 years, another 15 years, going in and out. I want to get stuck on the path. And this vision of this book came to me. And it was like, tell your life story. Talk about your life story. Talk about the stuff that we've talked about in this podcast. And it was like a physical book. Like, it was clear as anything. I could just see it, while my eyes were closed. And so that's what started me on this journey, writing this book. Then the daily doses were something, whilst I was writing that book, that I could start actioning every day, that I could start giving something back every day. I could start trying to put some positivity out there every day, and fight off the negativity in a way, and kind of fight for, hey, in this heartbeat I've got right now, this is a gift. What am I going to do with it? I've got this moment. I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised, the next heartbeat. I'm not promised the next 60 years or 100 years, or, with technology, who knows how long. But I'm promised this moment. What am I going to do with this moment? And that's really what started me on the Decide Your Destiny Daily Dose. And because it was, how do I bring some positivity into people's lives? How do I bring some look, it's a hard thing to say, because there are a lot of people struggling and across the globe in many different ways. But for me, it was almost, how do I bring a reality check to myself every day, and everyone else? Because I felt like, if I'm getting up negative, holy crap, Carl, you've been through the ringer, you've got this heartbeat, what are you going to do with it? And that's what I wanted to put my energy into. So that's where the videos came from.
Awesome. And before I ask my final question, where can everyone get their daily dose? Where can we find you online and connect with you?
I like that, Raven. So if you go to YouTube, my name's Kyle Spyrides, so Kyle, and then it's Spyrides, so Spyrides, Rides. So I'm on YouTube. I'm also my book selling on Spyrides.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. So yeah, give us a follow. Always reach out to me. I'm always keen to reach out and chat to people as well.
Thank you. And final question. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your reset?
The biggest lesson I learned was the meaning behind Decide Your Destiny. And that was something that my grandfather told me. And I realized just the other day, while thinking about it, it was only a few months before I got sick. And I was sitting on the couch with him, and he had this beaming joy in his face, and the sun was kissing the side of his face, and he just looked at me in the eyes, and he just said, "Decide your destiny." And it's not that we were talking about anything in particular. I went, "What? What are you saying?" He said, "Decide your destiny." I said, "Clivey, what are you saying to me?" He said, "Make sure that whatever you do in your life, that you decide your destiny." And I think that stuck in my head somewhere in some corner, and it came out a lot later in my life. And I'm grateful that it came out.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. Super appreciative. Wonderful conversation and excellent storytelling skills.
Thanks, Raven. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for creating the space and asking the awesome questions.
Awesome. Going forward, I had to make a decision. Cry later and bring strength now. Trust your gut, faith and belief that it will work. Decide your destiny. Decisions don't stop here. Make the decision to share this message. There are people daily living below their greatest potential, and they need this message. So if you're listening, make sure you subscribe and share this message with at least one person today that needs to live their best life and level up. And if you're watching or listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You got it? Subscribe. And I want to stay connected with you. And you can do that by following me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Until next time, a reset is always available to you.